This is Greek with David Hutchison. Prepositions taking 2 or 3 cases. This is our second time to discuss prepositions. Remember that prepositions don't decline. That means they don't go through all of the different case endings. Remember that prepositions govern the case of the noun or the pronoun or the substantive, that is, anything that acts like a noun. Prepositions are in a master-slave relationship, and the preposition is the master, and the object of the preposition is the slave. So the preposition tells the other word, its object, this is the case you have to be. What we've seen so far is prepositions that take only one case. For example, we've met the preposition apa, which takes the genitive. Eis only takes accusative. Ek only takes genitive. And in only takes dative. So what that means is anytime you see one of these prepositions, it will take an object in that case. So those are prepositions with one case. Let's learn a few more prepositions that only take one case. The preposition anti only takes an object in the genitive. Its basic meaning is instead of, in place of, or for. Here's an example from Matthew 2:22. Archeleos basilue tes Judaias anti tu patros autou Herodu. Archelaus was reigning in Judea instead of, so here's the preposition anti plus genitive, instead of his father Herod. The word patros is genitive. So instead of his father. The preposition pra takes only the genitive. Pra means before, and that can be before in terms of time or before in terms of a place. Here's an example with pra plus the genitive with a time sort of meaning. Before the feast, pra tes or tes to Pascha. Before the feast of the Passover. You haven't had this word feast yet, but this one is genitive. Before the feast of the Passover. Pros only takes the accusative. It means to or toward or with. 1 John 2:1 says, parakleton ekomen, pros ton patera. We have a paraclete, we have an advocate, a comforter. We have an advocate, pros ton patera, with the Father. Father is accusative. If you weren't sure, the article ton helps you with that. The preposition soon is very common. It only takes the dative and it means with. Acts 14:28, they spent time soon tois mathetais, with the disciples. Soon tois mathetais. So all of those prepositions are prepositions that take one case. The new concept for today, and it's a relatively small new concept, is that some prepositions can take an object in more than one case. Some prepositions take 2 cases. Some can even take 3 cases. So that means the preposition may take something in genitive. It may take something in dative. It may take something in accusative. So here's the procedure that you're going to do. You're going to look up that preposition plus whatever case its object is. So let's say you had preposition plus genitive. What you would do is you would go to the lexicon, look up that preposition plus genitive, and you would see what it could mean. So here's dia, a preposition that can take 2 different cases. If its object is genitive, it means through or by. If its object is accusative, it means because of or on account of. You see how those meanings are pretty different? So what you do is you look for dia, and then you find out whatever its object is, and then you would look it up, dia plus genitive or dia plus accusative. Here's an example with genitive. Apen dia paraboles. He spoke through a parable. So that's dia plus genitive. He spoke through a parable. Since it's dia plus genitive, it means through or by. Here's one with accusative. They could not bring him dia ton aklan. So now we have dia plus accusative. How do I know it's plus accusative? Well, because ton is accusative and aklan is accusative. So I look up dia plus accusative, and I see that it means because of or on account of. So here it's they could not bring him because of the crowd. Kata. This preposition takes either the genitive or the accusative. Now pay attention to this one. With the genitive, kata means against or down. With the accusative, it means according to. Those meanings are very much opposed. So here's one plus genitive, kata plus genitive. Don't accept an accusation, kata presbyteru, unless, and then Paul will go on to give some stipulations. But here what we have is we have kata plus genitive. So I look up kata plus genitive, and I see that it means against or down. So this is don't accept an accusation against an elder. Kata plus genitive. Now its meaning with an accusative is very different. It's according to. It's not against if it's with accusative, but it's according to. So Christos apethinen, Christ died, huper ton hamartion, for the sins, hamon, of us. You haven't studied that word yet, you will soon. Christ died for our sins, kata tas graphos, according to the Scriptures. I look up kata plus accusative because tas graphos is accusative. So I find kata plus accusative, it means according to, and so Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures. This is 1 Corinthians 15:3. By the way, all of the Gospels, if you look at the titles of the Gospels, it's kata plus accusative. Kata Matthaion, kata Markon, kata Lukon, kata Ioannein. Kata plus accusative, according to. So according to Matthew, according to Mark, according to Luke, according to John. There's also an idiom I want to point out to you. Koth hemeron. This is kata plus a little bitty change at the end. Koth hemeron, according to the day. It's an idiom that means daily. If you ever see koth hemeron, it means daily. Meta. Meta can take two different cases. It can take genitive, in which case it means with. If it takes accusative, it means after. Here's an example with genitive. You welcomed ton logon meta karos. You welcomed the message. Logon can mean word. It can also mean message. How did you welcome it? You welcomed it meta karos, with joy. Karos is genitive. So with joy. With accusative, it means after. He will rise meta tres hemeros, after 3 days. Peri. Peri, when it takes a genitive, means about, concerning, for. When it takes an accusative, it means around. 1 John 2:2. He is the propitiation. Now that's a very debated term right there. I'll let you explore that term sometime. He is the propitiation peri ton hamartion. Peri plus genitive means about or concerning or for. So he is the propitiation for our sins. Now here's one with accusative, peri plus accusative. If a millstone were hung, peri ton trokelon autou. Trokelon is not a word you've ever seen before. It's not very frequent. So when you see an infrequent word, just look it up. If a millstone were hung, peri plus accusative, around his neck. Huper. Huper with the genitive can mean for. Huper with the accusative can mean above or over. Galatians 1:4. He gave himself huper ton hamartion. Hamon. He gave himself huper plus genitive for the sins, hamon, of us, for our sins. Accusative example, Matthew 10:24. Uk estin mathetes, huper ton didaskalon. A disciple is not, a disciple uk estin, a disciple is not, huper plus accusative, above the teacher. A disciple is not above the teacher. Huper plus accusative. Hupa. With genitive, hupa means by. With accusative, hupa means under. Matthew talks a lot about fulfilling. It's a huge word for Matthew. To fulfill what was spoken, hupa kuriu, dia tu prophetu. By the Lord, hupa plus genitive. By the Lord, then here's another prepositional phrase, dia tu prophetu, through the prophet. That's hupa plus genitive. Here's hupa plus accusative. There is no other name, hupa ton uranon. There is no other name under heaven. Hupa plus accusative, under. And of course that verse goes on to say there's no other name under heaven given to men by which we must be saved. There is only one way. Epi can take three cases. Now, the interesting thing about epi is its meaning in all three cases is basically the same. They all basically mean upon, on, at, or about. There's not a lot of difference, maybe slight nuances. You can dig into a lexicon and read about that. But basically, this preposition means the same thing regardless of case. So let's take a look. Let's just look at one example with epi plus genitive. This is from the Christ hymn in Colossians 1. All things were created by him in tois uranois, in the heavens, and kai epites geis. Epi plus genitive, upon the earth. So you look up the preposition plus the case of its object, and you find the meaning. Now here's an example of a preposition with three cases that does differ a little bit between genitive and dative and accusative. So para with the genitive means from, with the dative para means with, and with accusative it means beside or by. 2 Timothy 1:18 talks about mercy para kuriu. So para plus genitive, I see that it means from, so this is mercy from the Lord. With the dative it means with. Para anthropos tuta adunaton estin. With men, so that's para plus dative, with men this is impossible. So para plus dative, and then para plus accusative. You'll see this one a lot in the Gospels. He was walking para tain thalason, tes Galileas. He was walking by the sea. This is para plus accusative. By the Sea of Galilee. This chart comes from Black's book, Learn to Read New Testament Greek. All grammars have a chart that looks something like this. This is viewing the prepositions in terms of their movement. You see ace plus accusative. The arrow is going into the circle, so ace plus accusative means into. Pros plus accusative means to. Notice the arrow is not going into it, it's just going right up to it. So pros plus accusative means to. The next arrow you see is dia, goes all the way through the circle. Dia plus genitive. At the bottom left of your screen you have para plus accusative. It's beside the circle, beside. Hupa plus accusative means under. You see the arrow going down for kata plus the genitive. That can mean down. Now look at the top. You have ana plus accusative going up. Huper plus accusative means over. And api, imagine that one resting on the circle, on or upon the circle. Now on the right side, you have the preposition ek, which you've met before, that means out of, and you can imagine the word exit. Apa means from. You see it's going away from the circle. And you already saw dia a moment ago, going all the way through the circle. So maybe this visual will help you get some prepositions in your mind. You've seen before that depending upon whatever word comes next, certain words will undergo certain changes, really just for the sake of sounding good, for euphony. We see some changes here. If a preposition ends with a vowel, and the next word begins with a vowel, then the preposition will often drop its last letter. So ana ends with an alpha, that's a vowel. If the next word began with a vowel, it would change to on. And notice you have what looks like an apostrophe right there, standing where the vowel used to be. So this process is called elision. Now what do you think would happen if the next word began with an H sound, a rough breathing mark? What are you going to do with that H sound? Well, if you've got on your preposition a T sound at the end or a P sound at the end, when you put T plus H, what do you make? T plus H equals TH, which is a theta. What if you put P plus H? P plus H is a phi. So let's look at this chart. We've got on the left column, we've got the preposition. We've got what it will look like before a smooth breathing mark when it elides. We're assuming that the next word begins with a vowel. And then what would it look like with a rough breathing mark? So ana, if the next word begins with a vowel, it would change to on. And even before rough breathing, it would still simply be on. Okay, but now how about on T? If that iota drops out, we just have aunt. If the next word has an H sound, T plus H equals TH. So you get theta, aunt. Apa. If the omicron drops out, you have op. If the next word begins with an H sound, P plus H equals PH. Off. Dia. The alpha would drop and simply leave you with D. And even before rough breathing, nothing else would change. It would simply be D. Then a P. If the iota goes away, you have ep, the P sound. If the next word begins with an H, the rough breathing, PH equals phi. So you would have F. Kata would change to kot. And then that would change to koth with the rough breathing mark. Remember when we were looking at the word kata a little bit ago, we saw that idiom koth hemeron. The reason that kata went to koth is because the next word hemeron starts with a vowel, an eta, and it starts with a rough breathing mark. So Koth switched to Koth. Meta would go to met before smooth breathing, and meth before rough breathing. Para is going to go to par, whether before smooth or rough breathing. And Hupa is going to go to hup or huf before rough breathing. I don't want you to memorize this list, but I do want you to be able to recognize it when you see it. Now, there are a couple of exceptions. Languages always do exceptions, so we shouldn't be surprised that Greek would do exceptions. So peri is going to look the exact same regardless of what word comes next. Peri, peri, peri. Same thing with pra. Compound verbs. A verb that begins with a preposition is called a compound verb. So what you can do is you can take the verb stem and then you can throw a preposition on the front of it and make a compound verb. You're putting two things together, you're compounding it. So we call these verbs that do this compound verbs. So I've got the verb balo, throw. I can put ek, which means out. If I put it on the front there, ek balo, what do you think that means? I throw out. So sometimes compound verbs work that way, where you can put the meaning of the preposition plus the meaning of the verb, put two and two together, and that's what you get. It doesn't always work that way, though, so let's look at that in just a moment. But why are we talking about compound verbs? Well, since we're talking about prepositions, we want to point out that in past tense forms, when you have to augment a verb, remember that we put the augment right before the verb stem before, and that's still the same thing that happens. The augment goes right before the verb stem. Where does the preposition go? The preposition goes on the very beginning. It will look like the augment is in between the preposition and the verb stem. So that's where it will show up. So for example, ek balo, I throw out. The basic verb stem is balo, the preposition is ek. So let's put that augment right before the verb stem, ex ebelon. So the augment goes right there, right before the verb stem, right after the preposition, in between the preposition and the verb stem. Now the reason the kappa changed to xi was to accommodate for that sound of the epsilon, the vowel, showing up right there. The Greeks didn't like ek ebelon, they liked ex ebelon. Now if the preposition ends in a vowel, the vowel will drop. It will elide. So apathnesko, which means I die. We've got apa at the front, there's the preposition, then the verb stem thnesko. So we'll put that augment right in between, and this omicron is going to go away. So opethanon, right after the preposition, right before the verb stem, and the omicron ran away. Let's try some practice. Anagnoske ha mathetes parabolein, peri tes basileas. I've put the prepositional phrase in yellow. Still do our normal strategy. We've got a verb right here. Here's a nominative subject. Here is an accusative direct object. Anagnoske ha mathetes parabolein. Anagnoske is a verb. It's a new verb. It's taking the preposition ana plus gnosko. Now this is a good example where you can't simply always put two and two together and get what the word means. Ana means up, gnosko means I know. This doesn't mean I know up. It means I read. So don't always put those two components together and think that's how words mean. For example, butterfly is not butter that flies. So this means I read. and it's got a third singular ending. He reads. We do have a subject, ha mathetes, so the disciple reads. What does he read? He reads a parabolane. The disciple reads a parable. And then here's the prepositional phrase. Peri plus genitive. How do I know it's genitive? Because I know tes is genitive, and I know basileus is genitive. If I wasn't sure about basileus, this is where the article really helps, because I know tes is always genitive. So I look up peri plus genitive, and it means about. So the disciple reads a parable about tes basileus, about the kingdom. Ek balamen, ta panera, ek tu oiku. So here we've got a verb. I have a prepositional prefix on it, ek. Now notice this. In Greek, it's very common to have a verb with a prepositional prefix, and then when you have a prepositional phrase, it's going to repeat it. It's not for extra emphasis. This is just the way Greek works. Ek balamen ta panera, ek tu oiku. So ekbalo means to throw out. Ekbalamen, first plural. We throw out. Ta panera. This is a direct object. It's accusative plural. It's an adjective. The adjective blank. This is one of these substantival adjectives, an adjective that doesn't modify a noun, it acts like a noun. This is accusative, plural, and it's neuter. We throw out the evil what? It's plural and it's neuter. The evil things. We throw out the evil things. And then this prepositional phrase, ek tu oiku, we throw them where? Out of the house. So in English, we wouldn't say we throw out the evil things out of the house. What we would say is we throw the evil things out of the house. Another example. Epon hoi huioi ton propheton lagus kata tain alethion. So here's a verb. This is a form of the aorist verb to speak. Remember apon, third singular, he said. This is third plural. They said. This one you just have to see a bunch of times and get used to seeing since it's so common. So there's a verb. Here's a nominative subject. The sons spoke. Now we can go ahead and grab this genitive phrase. The sons, ton propheton, the sons of the prophets, spoke lagus. This is our accusative direct object. The sons spoke words. It's plural. They spoke words. Kata tain alethion. Kata plus accusative. How do I know it's accusative? Because tain is accusative and alethion is accusative. So I look up kata plus accusative. Kata plus accusative means according to. So this means according to the truth. The sons of the prophets spoke words according to the truth. So what you're going to do when you encounter prepositions, find out what is the case of the object, look up that preposition plus that object, and that will be the meaning of the preposition in that particular context.